Today is Friday, April 15th, 1994. I'm Judith Antelman with the Holocaust Oral History Project in San Francisco, and I'm interviewing Adolf Makaruk.
Makaruk.
And assisting me is Catherine Peters, and producing is John Grant. Catherine Palmer. Okay, Adolf, can we begin? Tell me where and when you were born.
I was born in 1926 in eastern Poland, a town called Brest. It used to be called various names, depends on where it belonged to. In Russia, Tsarist Russia used to be Brest-Litovsk. Then it was Brest on the river Bug during the Polish time, and now it's called Brest. And that town lies on the border of what is now Belarus, or ex-Soviet Union, and Poland. And it was, that part of Poland was sort of designated or given away to Soviet Union as a result of a Yalta conference between Stalin and Churchill and Roosevelt, together with Romania and Lithuania and all those countries. And that town was famous in 1917. That was when Lenin, without consolidating with allies in the World War I, made a peace treaty with Germany and allowed Germans to move a lot of their military from Eastern Front to Western. And fortunately, the United States entered the war, World War I, and Germany was defeated. And then in 1919, again, Soviet Union, then as a Soviet Union, they attacked Poland and went all the way to almost Warsaw, and with the support of a French general staff, and managed to defeat Soviet Union and push them back to the 1922 Riga Conference borders. And that stayed till 1939. In 1939, 1st of September, Germany suddenly attacked Poland, And I was in Brest town, which was a very military town. It has a lot of garrisons, etc. That town was bombed, and Germany occupied that part for about 2 weeks. And the Soviet Union, which had a non-aggression treaty with Poland then, attacked from behind, and Brest was taken by Russians, and it remains that till 1941. And my father was working on the Polish State Railway. He was actively engaged in the World War I, liberating Poland, and so he was under suspicious list of KGB, which then known NKVD, and there were mass arrests and deportation in phases. They deported us 2 days before Germany attacked Russia. I mean, they were so busy with taking Polish people to Siberia, ignoring the fact that any time Germany attacks them, and the silence everywhere. So anyway, they took us to Siberia and dumped us in the town called Barnaul, which is south of Novosibirsk, far away. And we were put in the barracks, and straight away, almost within a few weeks, we were told that the Polish government made the agreement with Stalin to give us amnesty, and we are free citizens, but we cannot move around, sort of, So, and they are forming Polish army, and that army was supposed to be fighting with the Russians against Germans together. And so because of the Siberian climate, everybody moved south to which is called Kazakhstan now. And that is the center of the Polish army was there. And of course, They didn't really give us any food or uniforms or arms or anything, and they didn't release everybody from the prison. In fact, there was I don't know if you heard the story of Katyn, when they arrested about 25,000 Polish officers and Russians shot just before the German attack. And that is now sort of is a big thing with Russia. They allow us to see all the documents and everything. And so consequently, Polish government suggested that why don't you let us, all this army, go to Iran under the British influence and then let British arm, etc., and form Polish army there, and we come back. So of course, fights, of course. So they let us go, and I was there very young. I was about 15. So in order to get me out of Russia, all the children, they form a lot of like academies, you know, high schools and boys' schools, etc., pseudo-military. And I joined one of these, and my mother and sister become military dependent, and we left the Soviet Union to across Caspian Sea to Pahlavi, which is town, which is port near Tehran. And we stayed there. There was a British took care of us, and my mother went to civilian camp in India, which she returned to Poland in 1946. And I stayed, and I went to the cadets school in Palestine, which used to be called Palestine there. And I stayed there till I graduated and was drafted to the Polish military. And I was transferred to Polish Air Force in England. And thus I began my training. The war finished. So I was sort of a survivor. A lot of friends of mine died because they didn't join the Air Force, and they stayed with Polish Army, and they went to Monte Cassino in Italy, and they were very young, and most of them got killed by Germans. And I stayed in England, and I entered the Polish like a high school, which I completed my matriculation, what I call it, and got a granted scholarship to the English college. And after graduation, I emigrated to United States. I was married to English lady, and I was in Chicago till 1961, and came to California in 1961. I emigrated to the United States in 1956. And I've been working in San Francisco, and I'm recently retired as an architectural engineer. That's a short story.
Well, I'd like to go back
Sure.
to your childhood
Mm-hmm.
and fill in some questions. And first, I'd like to ask you about your childhood, what your parents did, if you had any siblings. You can first tell me about.
I see. Yes, I had a sister who is 4 years older than me. Her name is Susanna. And mother and father, of course.
And what did your parents do?
My mother was a housewife. My father was working on the Polish State Railway. He was like a supervisor of a repair and maintenance facility of a train. But he was very actively engaged in a veteran association, equivalent Polish veteran, and so he was under this responsibility. Anybody who was like policemen and their families, any connection with army, teachers, civil service, civil servants, they all were, men were arrested generally and either shot or sent somewhere else, and family deported to Siberia. We were lucky because we were just 2 days before, but in 1939 and 40, that was the major deportation in the very severe climate. A lot of people died. And I went to the high school in Poland. and was member of Polish Scouts, like everybody else. And my sister was going to high school too, and that's about all. We were quite, well, not well off, but middle class. We were living in Brest in most of the towns in Eastern Europe were uh, predominantly Jewish because of the old Polish structure. There was a nobleman and aristocracy, and there was a peasants, and that middle layer, merchants and shopkeepers, that was usually doctors, even professional people, were usually Jewish. And I was living in the very Jewish neighborhood in Poland. I had a lot of Jewish friends. There was no, on our level, there was never any anti-Semitism. Maybe on the lower classes, peasants, anything like this, because they had old grudges for money lending business. They didn't understand the compound interests, So I think, but that's about all. And from my childhood.
Okay. Did you go to any? What kind of schools? Did you go to any religious schools? Or?
No, I was in private high school, which is called gymnasium in Poland, and religion was taught in every school.
Were there Jews around?
Whether Jews or not, the Jewish people usually had that particular.
Not religious.
Not religious, and not only Jewish, but we had a lot of Russian Orthodox, for instance, and Greek Orthodox, because that was Eastern Poland. They just didn't go to the class, and if there was a prayer, they just stood, and was no. In the school there was no. Anti-Semitism was fought.
How would you describe the political and the cultural environment in Brest while you were growing up?
Yeah, the Politica was very military because there's a lot of Polish Air Force there and a lot of garrisons and fortification. That was one of the defense posts, on the east side. So it was very. I think our family was very patriotic and very sort of military oriented. There was Brest was about 60,000 people, civilian, excluding military, and it had I think 3 theaters and 4 cinemas and a lot of restaurants, things like this. But it was a very nice town actually.
Were you a member of any political or social organizations?
No, I was too young. I was member of a Polish Scouts.
What's
Yeah.
the Polish Scouts?
Scouts, scouting. It was very strong, which was patriotic organization,
Do you remember the first evidence of change in Brest during the 30s? Were there any changes in the environment while Hitler was arriving in Germany?
Well, the change came with 1935. From what I heard, when our Marshal Piłsudski, who was the liberator and dictator of Poland, died, and nobody could fit his shoes, so we had a Polish government which became quite nationalist. And but I didn't see any changes as far as on any level. We heard that the Germans are arming. Everybody expected sooner or later we're going to have a war with Germany, but we thought that we're strong enough, and we had a strong military, and we had this treaty of non-aggression pact with Stalin. So even if German attack, we automatically move east because all the fortifications were there, and military, and we defend still. And when we did that, and then Russia attacked from behind. So that was the.
During the 30s, and after the Nuremberg laws were passed, Did you notice any mistreatment or anti-Semitic treatment toward the Jews in Brest?
No, there was once a Polish policeman was murdered inspecting Jewish meat store because that particular store owner was selling meat without the stamp, you know, and I think he had to fight the murder, and there was some stone throwing and things like this of hooligans, but that is the only, that was about 1935 or something like this. But otherwise than that, no. On the same street where I was living was a synagogue, you know, and that Jewish population in Brest was very poor usually. They were not what you might think, like in the United States, everybody, every lawyer and doctor, you know. But there was a lot of very, very poor Jewish people there. They mainly were tradesmen, you know, shoemakers and tailors, things like this.
Can you describe the events leading up to the German invasion? Because you said that the Polish, that the Russian government, they were concerned with getting you out to Siberia, and they didn't even prepare for an attack.
Right.
What were the few days leading up to September?
Few days leading to that, what Germany called Barbarossa invasion, 1941. You're talking about, yes?
Actually, it was September 1st, 1939.
1939. That was, I think, like about a week before there was a Polish mobilization, and we could hear this German give Poland ultimatum, you know, that they gave us the, I think we have to give us some territories, I think like this. So which was depriving us from access to the sea, the Baltic Sea. And Poland refused that. No way. And then Hitler already had a pact with Stalin. And Stalin assured him that if he attacked Poland, they won't do anything about it. So, and in fact, Hitler agreed to Stalin, okay, if you don't do anything about it, you can have half of the Poland that will be your sphere of influence. But we didn't know about it. That was, we still had a pact with Russia. And then about 5 o'clock in the morning, my mother woke me up and said, come on, let's dress, because we can hear the bombs, because there was the airport was bombing and things like this. So we went to the garden. And there was about 4 air raids on Brest. I was living not too far from a hospital, Polish hospital, which Germans tried to bomb, but by mist. In fact, they had the painted red crosses on the thing, and they tried to hit the bridges. And then the Germans attacked Brest. It was like 4 days battle with Polish garrison, and of course Polish people surrendered there, and that was the end of the war. And German state really behaved themselves to everybody, because they knew that they're going to give this territory back to Soviet Union. So I've seen a lot of Jewish kids talking to Germans in Yiddish, you know, they understood. And then the Soviets came in, and Germans pulled back, Soviets came in, and real terror started. And, you know, people were arrested and executed, you know. And that lasted for 2 years. And then prior to 1941 German invasion was everybody expected the war. Everybody was talking about it and trying to buy some sugar and flour and store it, you know, except Russians. They didn't just believe it, that Hitler would attack them.
What was your family doing during that time?
During that time, my father was, of course, fired from his job on Polish State Railroad, and fortunately his hobby was woodworking, like mine. So he was doing a lot of repairs, you know, window repairs and things like this, and managed to. In fact, he was doing some work for the Russian militarism. That's why they sort of kept him to the end. You know, they didn't arrest us at first, and so we used to sell things like we had some jewelry. You know,
Were you and your sister going to school?
I was going to, yes, under the Soviet regime they allow in Brest one Polish high school, and it was so crowded, so we had 2 sessions, you know, like from 8 to 2 and from 2 to 6, you know. And it was Polish high school. It was taught in Polish. We had a Russian language lecture, and we had political lectures by the, what they call it, political officer, Politruk. Used to come young girl, and she was telling how wonderful it is in the Soviet Union, and you know what Marx and Engels is, Arendt, etc.
How did you feel going to school under this it was, I guess it was under the Soviet
Well, we thought
regime?
this is all temporary. You know, we thought that eventually Germany collapse and Russia collapse, and we never treated it as a permanent situation. But it was depressing because they tried to teach us things which we knew is not true, you know, and we couldn't object, you know.
What were some of the things they tried to teach you?
Well, how wonderful life is in Stalin, and that the Poland was all capitalist, you know, and victimizing all the workers, and there was terrible oppression, and was not like that at all. So a lot of people get themselves in trouble, and they got fired from the school and disappeared with their families. It was very depressing to see, because there was a purges like in February 90. You know, you go to school and you see some of your friends are not there anymore. So they're sent to Siberia again and again. So, and teachers. And teachers was just, some of them were new teachers, some of them the teachers which were sent from Russia, who managed to speak Polish. And a lot of teachers just kept their mouths shut. You know. It was oppressive. You know.
Were Jewish children allowed to go to school?
Oh yes, Jewish kids they could go either to Polish school, or they could go to Russian school, or anywhere. Yeah. Or I don't think they had the Jewish schools. No, there was a Jewish high school before the war. I know because some of friends of mine there was elementary Jewish schools and high schools in Poland, private. You know, so you could do. But under Russian occupation, there was a Polish school. Most of the Jewish people young went to Polish school, I think, to continue their education. They were not, as a rule, they were not sent to Siberia. Jewish people, most of them were escapee from Germany, and when they a lot of Jewish people, when they sort of almost, you can feel the German going to attack, they just volunteer went to Russia. A lot of Jewish people.
So what years were you in school under the Russians? Was it till 41?
Yeah, I was to 41 to June.
And what happened in June 41?
Well, in June 41, they came, the Russians, KGB came at 12 o'clock, knock at the door, you know, and we sort of expected them who knock at 12 o'clock, and they came with the rifles, and political officer came in and say, are you this and this person? Say yes. So they get up from the bed and they put us in the kitchen. We had to sit, and they asked my father, said, do you have any rifles or guns? I said, no. So say, you better give it to me, because if we find you dead. So say, go ahead. So they were looking for it. They were tearing everything down and throwing on the floor. Drawer contents, you know, clothing, everything. And like 4 o'clock in the morning, they call us to another room and say, you are under such and such a paragraph, you are transferred to another district of Soviet Union between you and you are allowed to take, I think, 100 kilograms, and you have 2 hours to pack. So we had the 3 houses there, and so my father said, "What about our property and furniture?" I said, "Well, you can either give it to Soviet government and we sell it and give you the money, or you give it to your friends." So my father said, "I want to give it to friends." So the KGB sent my sister with a guard to neighbor, which we already prearranged if something happened. He came in and signed, and then 2 days later, Germans came in. So, and they put us on the train. Half an hour later, they called my father out from the train, and they put him in prison to be shot because. And then when the Germans attacked Brest-Litovsk, he was in that Polish prison, Russian prison, and the Russian guard ran away or got killed. So a civilian population opened the prisons, and all the prisoners came in. So my father returned home, and we were already gone to Siberia.
Why did the Russians put him in prison?
Well, because they wanted to shoot him.
For what reason?
Well, he was politically unreliable, and he was taking part in the World War I liberation of Poland. Anybody, all Polish officers, Polish police, they were usually shots made. So they took so many people from that transport, kept it in prison and sent us to Siberia, and they're going to finally eliminate them.
So when the civilian population opened the prisons, your father ran home?
Yeah,
You were
right.
already
I already
Siberia
gone.
with
Yeah,
your mother and sister.
yeah, right.
What did your father do?
Well, he stayed. He stayed during the war in Poland, and he was active a little bit in resistance, against Germany, against Germans, and he survived it. He was over like on the village somewhere there, keep low profile, and after the war, my mother and sister returned to Poland from India, because they were in India then, and my father stayed with them for a while, but I think they had a divorce and fall out.
Did your father ever talk about any of his activities in the Polish resistance?
No, I didn't really see him that much because I was in England and America, and he was in Poland. But when I visited Poland in 1966, first time, my relatives were at the moment, and I met him actually, but he was living with somebody else, remarried.
Can you describe your journey with your mother and sister to Siberia in 1941?
Yes, we were in the cattle trains, with like a platforms, so we could sit in the back, and there was no sanitary conditions except a hole in the floor and windows with bars. And there was 80 people in that carriage. In that train was terrible stuffy. It was June, and we took part being close to the window so I can smell. And I think once a day we were in the forest. Everybody had to leave, lined up and say, you have to go to the toilet now if you want. And they're back on the train, and they used to bring water and bread, and on some station sort of soup. And that took 2 weeks. Yeah.
Did anybody die on that journey?
Not in our train, no. And not in our carriage, but I was told that some older people died in another carriage. Yeah.
Other than the obvious mistreatment when stuffing 80 people on a cattle train, was there any other violence by the Russian soldiers toward?
No, they were not, because one of the reasons, because there was already war with Germany, you see, and they were so disgusted with Germans, you know, that they double-crossed them, and we sort of become like, we're almost allies, you know, like we say, we told you so, you know. So they treated us pretty good. There was no violence. There was individual shouting and things like this, but no bayonet poking and dogs and things like this. And when we were arrived to the town, we were taken to like old cinema, you know, and stayed there for a few days till they sent us to individual barracks. Right in town, there was no concentration camp. That was not concentration camp. That was like outside the city of Brno. There was a settlement camps, and we were there. And everybody between the age of 16 and I think 50, or I don't know, the upper limit, had to go to work. And in order so my mother didn't have to go, I volunteered. I was like 15, so I said, okay. So we went there, we were digging the irrigation trenches, and you had to have so many cubic feet to move. You couldn't just stay there and do a little. We had norm, as they call it, you know. And then when they allow us to go south, we organized the transport and went to Tashkent and joined the Polish Red Cross and Polish Army.
How long were you in Siberia when you first arrived, before you went south?
Well, I arrived in June and 41, and we went south in 1942, spring.
What were the living conditions like in Siberia? What type of bunks did you sleep in?
Well, we had a barracks, and it was a bunks. You could sleep. But it wasn't really that bad. I mean, it was bad, but it wasn't really that much better than Russians had. Ordinary people, you know. And each barrack had like a stove, so you could go leave your room and go cooking. And you had to go and buy the food on the black market or market, you know, and didn't give you any money. You had to sell your things, whatever you had, or go to work. So we used to sell like fur coats and good shoes and stocking, jewelry.
Were there toilets and washrooms in the barracks?
Yeah, they were common. They were not individual, but there was like common washrooms and common toilets. I mean, there was a toilet with a hose, you know, Oriental style.
What about the clothing? Were you able to wear your own civilian clothing, or did they give you?
No, we had our own. They didn't give anything. You had to have everything your own. Yeah. And fortunately, we were very fortunate because we were last, and it was just before the war. But people who were sent to Siberia a year ago, I mean, that's completely different stories. They almost didn't survive at all. A lot of people died. Yeah.
Can you describe the surroundings and describe your impressions of Siberia? What it looked
Well,
like?
that was town. You know, that was on the river Ob. You know, Obi, and it was a working class town. We had a few factories there, and they're very indifferent. You know, it was we used to go fishing on the river, caught pikes. You know, and there was just forests, and that wasn't in Siberia in the sense like a lot of people see, you know, taiga and forests and things like that. It was a sort of a downtown Siberia.
Did you receive any news from Europe? Did anybody know what was going on?
Well, yes, we knew it well, only from Russian radio, you know.
What did it say?
Well, they say that we are fighting Germans and we were making this and these victories, we're pushing Germans out, you know, and they never admitted that the Germans were already almost in Moscow and fall of Stalingrad, and that never had, you know. There was very screen, and there was a lot of. We've noticed that there's a lot of people who ran away from that front line, and they're telling different stories, you know, if they knew you. You know. And also a lot of Russian factories were dismantled and moved to Siberia. So we knew that was the reason, you know, that we'd been occupied by Germany. We didn't know much till we went to southern Russia and went in the Polish unit under Red Cross, Polish Red Cross, and then we had the free press from England, you know, and Polish authority was telling us what really happens. You know.
Was there any news about concentration camps or what was happening, what the Nazis were doing to the Jews?
Well, straight away, even 1939, you know, when Germany attacked, you heard the stories already that the Germans are murdering the Jews. Jews are number one on the list, you know. And we heard individual things. We heard of a concentration camps, but we didn't know where and what. We were under the Soviet regime, and they did not allow you to hear that. It's only rumors from Jewish people who escaped from Hitler's side. And they were telling already what happened, and we heard, you know. So yes, that was from the very beginning. I mean, we heard of Jewish persecutions. You know.
Can you describe a typical day in this camp that you were in this town?
Well, get up in the morning, had little to eat, and then I'll try to go to market with my mother to buy some food, and come back and sit in the evening and talk with friends, and hoping that the war will be over soon, you know, and we go back to Poland. So there was no physical, you know, sort of persecution. Oh, we had about once a week a political lectures, you know, bringing us up to date from the Soviet point of view, how glorious is everything, and Stalin going to win the war, and we're really beating Germans, and soon in Berlin. This kind, and you are not enemy. Don't think that you are the enemy of Soviet Union. Now together we're going to fight Germans. That's good. You know. So.
What kind of work did you do? Was it the same work every day?
Yeah, more. Well, if you finish one irrigation ditch, you could start another somewhere else, you know. And then once or twice I had to work in the brick factory, you know, carry bricks.
How many hours a day were you required to work?
8 hours. Yeah, as far as I remember. I don't.
What did your mother and sister do during the day?
My mother and sister stay home. My sister worked with me. But when they give us the, what they call amnesty, you know, when they recognize that we are not enemy of the state, we are fighting together, we didn't have to go to work. If you want to go to work for money, yes, but otherwise we did not require.
Did you live together as a family?
Yes, we had we had a room like this. There's two families. On one side was my mother and my sister, myself. On another was another Polish lady with 2 daughters. So, 6 people.
When did you make a decision to go south?
Well, almost immediately. I mean, we heard from Polish emissaries who come and say they have to go south because Polish army is forming there, and if you go there as a civilian, you know, Polish army will help you. And so we organized like a train load, you know, one carries about 80 people, and we went to Tashkent.
And this was allowed by the Soviets?
Yeah, that was we had to pay for the train and everything. We were civilians. We were never sort of prisoners. You know, we were sort of deportees, they call it.
So you left in what year to go to Tashkent?
42, spring 42, and when we went to Tashkent, it was absolutely mess there because town was full of people running away from the front and everything, civilian population. So the KGB then organized retransportation, and they put us in the collective farms around Tashkent with natives, the Kazakhs, and we stayed there, but we were free. And then we heard, okay, the nearest town there is a Polish Red Cross now started, so we went there and we were given a certificate to go to such and such a place for where Polish army starts, and we went there, and my mother, and I was in that like a junior high school, military quad, you know, and then we heard that they're going to send us finally to Iran. So we went to Iran, and my mother and sister came later.
So how long were you actually in Tashkent?
In Tashkent about probably 4 months.
And what were those living conditions like?
Well, we were on the farms where we could go and work in the fields, in the cotton field, and for that we get food. No money, just food. You know. And it was getting progressively worse, you know, because you start selling your stuff, finally you have nothing to sell. So I used to go and steal wheat, you know, and our neighbor had 2 stones with the hole there. We throw the stone and grind the wheat, the flour, and my mother make like a pancakes, you know. This we also, to the disgust of the native, cut the turtles. There was a lot of irrigation trains, and we found those big turtles are sunning themselves on the trenches. So when there was nobody watching, we cut that turtles, and if there was a problem of killing it, I remember. So we used to put it in the hot water and boil it, and pull up pieces of meat and eggs. So, and then that was the worst part as far as the food is concerned.
Were you able to live again as a family? With your
Yes, we're always living together. Yeah, my sister and my mother. And then when I went to this Polish army area, we had a good food, and I used to bring the food for my mother and my sister. She was staying not far. And once we left Russia, that was okay. There was a lot of, quite a number of Jewish people too who joined the Polish army there. In fact, I had 2 very close friends in the same school, and we went all together in Russia and in Israel, in Palestine, but still Polish high school, in military, and they went together with me to England and everything. So some of the Jewish people, as soon as they entered Palestine, they left Polish army and stayed in Israel. But some people did. Polish authorities were loose on this. You know. You want to go? That's fine. It's your country. I mean, we recognized it. There was no pressure on it. But a lot of, I have 2 close friends. One is doctor in Canada now, and another here who stayed and went together to schools and Air Force and everything. Yeah.
You mentioned that when you went to Tashkent, you received more news about what was happening to the Jews and what
No, not Tashkent. I mean, we didn't hear that about in Russia so much. We heard that when we were in Poland. But once we were in Polish army, you know, I mean, there we knew it already, but from Polish news media in London, and from the English press probably, that there was a lot of persecution of Jewish people and concentration camps, and that was known fact all during the war.
What year did you join the Polish army?
I was in 1942. I was 15 there, I think. That was like a cadet school, they call it, you know, academy. So just to show Russians that we are military, because they allowed to 160,000 Polish army to leave Russia. And we wanted to take as many as possible, children and everything, so we created that military schools, you know, and everything, so they can classify themselves as a military and live, and their family as a military dependents.
And where were you living when you joined the Polish army?
I was outside Tashkent, at Tashkent camp, and then we went to Persia, to Tehran, and from Tehran my mother went to India, to British civilian camp, and my sister, and I went to the cadet officer school in Palestine or Israel, and I stayed there. There was a lot of Polish army there in Israel.
Okay, so
We used to go to. It was very nice because we used to go in Jerusalem and in Rehovot, because it was a big town there. Two main, actually about like three main non-Arabic Jewish towns. It was like Jerusalem, Rehovot, and Haifa. And you could go to stores and talk Polish, you know. And we had a very good connection because of and we stayed. There was a Polish camp not far from Rehovot. I remember now.
So then you joined the Polish army when you were in Tashkent. You were living outside of Tashkent, and then was it the Soviets that decided to send you to Iran?
No,
the
the
Polish army.
Soviet agreed to that, but a Polish authority convinced Stalin that since he has no arms for us and no food, why don't you let us go to Iran, to Persia, and then the Polish army then will be further armed by British.
Once you were in Iran.
Yeah, right. And then he changed his mind straight away later, and it's only 160,000 were allowed to leave, and I was one of them. They deported altogether, I think, from Poland 2 million people to Siberia.
And so about
160 allowed to Iran. Some of them were allowed to go after 1945 back, and probably half died. Yeah.
Did your mother and sister go with you to Iran?
Yes, yes. No, not together. We went as a school first, and then like 3 days later was military dependence boat came in.
What kind of trains were you transported in?
Well,
Passenger trains or?
well, it was to Iran. We came by boat. We came by trains to a port called Krasnovodsk, which is on the Russian side, and then took a Russian boat across 2 days later to a town called Pakhlevia, that's what it's called now, port, and then by trucks. The British and Polish army took us to Tehran, to camps. Yeah.
And what were those living conditions like?
Well, they're very good in comparison, you know. I mean, we had food, we had entertainment, and we had nice clothing and schools dressed that way. It was very good.
And then your mother and sister joined you a few days later?
Yeah, my mother a few days later, and then I had a choice either to follow with my mother to civilian camp and go to India, because that was in Persia, it was just a temporary situation, or join the Polish army, you know, real Polish army cadet school, and go to Palestine. So I went to Palestine, and my mother went to India, and sister to civilian camp. Yeah.
How long were you in Iran?
I was in Iran probably a year. About a year.
And what about your mother and sister?
Yeah, about the same time. And then they went to India, and in 1946, I think, not 45, they came back to Poland. Yeah.
So you went to Palestine?
And to Palestine. Yeah, I was in that cadet school, and when I graduated, I was drafted to the Polish Air Force. And because Polish Air Force was in England, I was transferred to England. I was like, and stayed in England and start training, and the war finished.
Was the cadet school was in Palestine?
Yeah, it was in Palestine. Yeah.
So can you describe your time in Palestine?
But the time in Palestine, the cadet school was very, very disciplined, military. I would say high school. Then we had the lectures, regular curriculum, and we had the military training, stay in the camps, and we allowed with the permission, with the pass, we could go to Jerusalem or Rehovot or Tel Aviv, for passes, and that was. But main occupation was education, to finish the high school.
What year was this?
1944, I finished.
So
43 to 44.
okay. What kind of news were you hearing in Palestine?
Oh,
What was happening in Europe?
we heard everything, we heard that we followed the war progression, the front and everything. We also heard about what Germans are doing to Poles and Rush and Jewish people, and that was well-known fact, quite well-known. We didn't hear the names, like nobody heard about Auschwitz or Treblinka or Sobibor or Buchenwald, but we heard there is a mass destruction of civilian population.
What were the reactions like?
Well, we were, we were sorry, because there were Polish people, Jewish people, everybody else. That was, we wanted the revenge. Actually, go back to Poland, fight,
So then you were in Palestine for a year at the cadet school.
Yeah, right.
And you were being trained, and can you describe that in more detail?
Well, we were high schools, we had the lectures like maths and English and literature and everything else, and we had the military training, and in the evening do your homework and listen to the radio, and had some theaters, cinemas. There is a lot of American movies coming back, and occasionally got to see the Jerusalem mostly. We're very fascinated by that, because we heard about all those things. And when you come and see really something different. Yeah. And we were, we used to go to cafes and restaurants if we had money. Was talk to Jewish people, because most of them were from Poland. I mean, large number of Jewish people were from Poland. And a very good relation. There was no.
Were you aware of any political organizations or any resistance groups, Jews and non-Jews in Palestine, forming?
Yes. We heard of Irgun Zwei Leumi.
Can you describe them?
Well, we just heard that this is the resistance movement, and I think we heard once I was in Jerusalem, there was an explosion, and somebody said, "Oh, this is Irgun." In fact, it was Jewish people who told us that the Irgun Zwei Leumi. We didn't know then that Mr. Began was in charge, and he was also in Polish army in Palestine. Yeah. And Isaac Shamir also. So
what was the environment like in Palestine? Was there animosity?
No, I didn't see any animosity of any animosity. I didn't see any animosity between Arabs and Jews. I didn't see any animosity between Christians and Jews, and Jews. We really had a wonderful time there, as far as I remember. I think this thing started after the war, when British not allowed to enter, Jewish people enter Israel, not to annoy Arab oil. I think it's all political.
What was the military training like?
Well, we're driving the trucks and shooting, training in shooting and marches and lectures about type of weapons, and on either side, German weapons and our weapons. And then they took us sometime to the field to look at capture German weapons, tanks from German Africa Corps, see what they look like and things like this. It was very, very exciting actually for a young boy.
Did you have any relatives or friends back in Europe in the 40s?
I had relatives, yeah.
Did you have any contact
No.
with them?
I had no contact from anybody.
Do you know what happened to them?
Oh, I know now what happened. They survived. Most of my relatives survived. They were on my age and older. They were in Polish underground army. So I think one or two got killed. But I would say about 90% survive. Everybody. Yeah, they were telling me when I came back to Poland, what was really life under the Germans then,
What did they tell you?
Well,
What
what-
were the stories?
About persecutions, But essentially what they're saying that German occupation was much easier than Russian. German and the German occupation, if you were not politically inclined or not interested in politics, they leave you alone. But of course, no, most people were politically inclined. They were trying. But they tell us about persecution, or Jewish persecutions. This when we left our town Brest, I was told later the Germans came in 1941 and they just deported all the Jews to ghetto and burned the whole area down to the ground. We heard about it. But after the war. Because we were not in Poland. So all of our friends, Jewish friends, we live right in Jewish neighborhood. We were all killed. They all perished. I think most of them went to Sobibor camp, which is with new camp with Germans started. When they attacked Russia, they opened the camp right close to population center. Eastern Poland was a lot of Jewish people there, mainly because that was the area where they were most free. I don't know if you know the history. The Jewish people came in 13th century to Poland from Germany, and they started all the merchants and trade and everything, and they even retained their language, which was then German, became Yiddish. And I think Poland was one of the countries, or the only country where Jewish people were allowed to retain their customs, and they were not forced to mix, with people. Unfortunately, that was sometimes opposite effect, because the picking on minority was easily, But that's why most of the people were in that part of Poland, Jewish people.
Did you know any people? Did you have any friends that were in the Irgun?
Go what?
Did you have any friends that were in the Irgun in Israel?
No. I just heard about it. There is a organization, the Irgunsfeile Umi or something. I forget. And then I heard now that in charge with Mr. Began. I didn't know. I just heard of organization. And there was another one too, I think. I don't remember. Yeah, those two.
Haganah.
Maybe, yeah.
Did you have any contact with your mother and sister?
Yes, when she was in India, I was probably, yeah, we still get the letters.
And what were they telling you?
Well, they're telling, you know, typical family story, how much they miss me, and they're doing very well, and they're fine, and they're hoping to return to Poland soon, you know.
So they were in a civilian camp?
Yes, you can come in India.
Where in India?
Near Bombay, called Kolhapur.
So they they had enough to eat.
Oh yeah, they're very good condition, yeah. And the British take care of them, you know, and the Polish Red Cross and everything. There are the schools there for children and everything. It was very well organized. And after the war, they could to return either to England or back to Poland. Yeah.
So you were in Palestine until 1944?
1944, when I was transferred to Air Force and sent to England in 1944.
What month was this?
I think it's June. I'm not sure. June.
So can you describe your journey from?
Oh yes. Well, I was in that cadet school, and I remember once when we came back from exercises on the desert, jeep came in, and Polish Air Force major came in and said to my commanding, "Do you have those three people here? Well, my name and two others." He said, "Yes, I want to talk to them." So he called me and said, "Did you apply to the Polish Air Force when you were in cadet school?" I said, "Well, you are accepted. Pick up your stuff and you go with me." So he dragged me out of this very, I think, cruel, military training, officer training, which we were going to Italy, and I was transferred straight away to the Polish Air Force unit. It was a Polish Air Force squadron there in Egypt, and then sent with another transport and with the British on a boat to England, and we were. That was a time when there was a lot of German submarines there, so we went to the Mediterranean Sea, and as soon as we passed the Gibraltar, instead of going north to England, we went all the way almost to United States, go all the way north, almost to the polar, and come back down to England. It was about 2 weeks by boat, and in I think in about 3 nights or 4 nights we had to sleep with my vests and boots and everything on, because it was a German torpedo boats.
I was going to ask, did you see a lot of German boats, German naval?
No, I heard shots, depth charges, but fortunately I was never involved in a direct battle. I was a bit, about 1 year too young everywhere.
What about any military planes overhead during your 2-week journey?
Yeah, no, that was no, we didn't see any German planes. No. I think it was very German. I think Air Force was very not active already there, but the U-boats were on the Atlantic coast. That was the time when we were already Italy was invaded, in 1944. I was in May, sorry, not in June.
I want to go back to Israel or Palestine for a minute. What city were you living in?
I was living in the camp.
And where was that?
That was south between Rehovot and Gaza, called Kastin.
Can you just describe the physical surroundings?
Well, physical surroundings were, there was a very beautiful town, Rehovot. I think it's a Jewish, very small town. And all the way down to Gaza, which was Arabic then, It's like 500 years difference between Arabic cities and then, different. Very like in Arabs live in biblical almost. Very clean. And there was a lot of orange grove called Pardes, name of it. It was just orange and fruit groves, which be beautiful, and Mediterranean Sea. And it was very nice. We used to go to the Rehovot and Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, mostly to Tel Aviv too. And the surrounding was very beautiful. It was irrigated, and I don't know if this orchard belonged to Jewish people or to Arabs, but there were a lot of orchards. We were living among orchards. So very nice.
Did you have a lot of contact with Arabs?
No, not much. Only as far as they were working in our camp. You know, they were in the kitchen and things like this. And when we used to go to stores, you know, in Jerusalem, or some stores were Arabic, some stores were Jewish. It was not special. You know.
Were you or any of your friends able to find any common language to speak with the Arabs? Did you have any discussions about the war?
No, they tried to, well, maybe they were not on the similar intellectual levels, but I think Arabs were, from what I heard later, and they were pro-Germans. Yeah, they were generally pro-German in Egypt, and in fact, even in Persia, when I was in Tehran, there was very strong German influence. I think all the industry was initiated by Germans before the war. And in the stores, for instance, I could converse in German with Persian from my German, what I learned in high school, you know. There were no, in fact, my first color movie was Gone with the Wind with German subtitles I was reading. I was in Tehran. I never forget that. I was so impressed with color movie. Yes. So there was a pro-German thing. I would say it was a latent anti-British, anti-Polish feeling. So.
That the Arabs had.
Mm-hmm. Much more than anybody else. With Jewish people, we had a very good community. Mm.
What, if you can remember, what were some of the discussions like surrounding the war and what the Germans were doing in Europe?
Well, we knew that we expected Germans to get defeated, you know, and then we were going to go back to Poland, and we never thought that Poland will be divided, that half of Poland is going to be given to Russia. And that was the Yalta Conference. That was a great shock and biggest disappointment, if not treacherous act, you know, to Poland. Yeah. But discussion were, well, you know, like if in the stores, where probably once or twice had discussion, but there was mainly on war epics, you know. I don't remember. I'm sure some Jewish people were saying that they want to have a Palestine free, but things like this. But I don't recall it.
On June 6, 1944, when the Allies landed in Normandy, were you in Palestine still?
No, I was in England already. I was sent to England in May 44, and I was in Polish Air Force, and I heard in the morning that Allied invaded Europe. Yeah.
What was that day like for you?
Well, it was joy, you know. Well, finally, let's hope, you know. And we knew it that the Europe will be free, and we were hoping that Poland will be still free, because that Polish border was still not decided yet. So which and where. We're still hoping that Russia get pulled back and give us back the area which they occupied in 1939.
So you arrived in England in May 1944.
Right.
Where in England?
First I was in Blackpool, which is the Polish Air Force, like a staging, area, but for all the medicals and everything. And then I was sent to Polish squadron, bomber squadron in near Lincoln, in England. and I was staying there till the war finished. So. And then when the war finished, I joined the. There was a lot of schools organized by Polish government and with British help to train people from military to civilian life. And I was given scholarship to college in Bournemouth, electrical engineering, and I became architecture engineer. Completely different. Yeah, and then I got married. Lived in London, and in 1956 immigrated to United States. I could immigrate because I don't know if you heard about this. American government had this quota business, that so many people were allowed. Well, Polish quota was exhausted to 2000 a year already, because it was very small. But I was married to a British lady, and I got on British quota. And also there was a special Polish ex-serviceman quota, 2000, which was low. So, and I had a sponsor in Chicago, a friend of mine who went before, and I went to Chicago.
I'd like to back up a little bit to the dates between May 1944 and the end of the war. You said you were in Lincoln, was the name of the
Yeah, Lincoln, yeah.
Now, where is that in relation to London?
Oh, this is straight north. North about probably 150 miles up. And the area called Lincolnshire, that is district, and town is Lincoln. It's a big, very old town. And all that area around it were essentially potato fields, were very flat. So it was very good to convert to the landing strip. So there was a lot of RAF and American Air Force there, bombers and squadron. And I was outside a town camp called Faldingward. There was 300 Polish squadron. Polish Air Force had about 16 squadrons, independent squadrons, and some of them took part in Battle of Britain, especially two squadrons. In fact, 14% of shot down German planes were by the Polish Air Force in England. And so I was in the bomber squadron, and I saw the bombers going in every day, bombing Germany. That was almost end of the war, and the war finally finished. And once we had the air raid, German planes came in and threw some bombs and submachine gun, but nothing, no casualty, nothing. In fact, they flew too low and killed themselves or something. There was a traffic light, there was a road repair sign, and they thought it was something important. They started shooting at it and came too low and hit it. So that's most of my direct war experience.
So during this year that you were in the Air Force Squadron, were you in training, or were you actually now?
No, I was ready to be trained. I was waiting for my turn, and I was rejected for the flying school because of my eyes. So I joined the radar maintenance and engineering group, and I was sent to train to another school, another part of England, and the war finished, so I didn't even have to complete it.
During that year, did you go to London at all, in 44?
I think I've been once or twice, but we tried to avoid London because it was bombing, air raids.
What did it look like?
Well, when I was driving there, it was I didn't see anything till after the war. But after the war, when I was in London, it was devastated, especially the east side and everything.
What did you see physically? Can you describe?
Well, physically, there was just craters, streets, and there was no houses, just ruins. And that lasted for a few years till Britain very quickly rebuild the whole city. But most of the damage was in the east of London, the docks and everything, the industry. We also saw, when I was in the Air Force in the Lincoln, there was not far from us, we heard there is a Rolls-Royce factory where they make engine planes, and we saw the bus bombs going across. You could hear them going, the rockets, V1s, not V2. They call it bus bomb. And so I've heard them. And we met a lot of civilian population who were living in the country from London, escaped from London and Coventry. I mean, we heard about, all this bombing and everything. But most of things which I learned is after the war, actually, from documentaries. Especially now, you can hear what really happened in the war.
During this time, between 44 and 45, what kind of news reports were you now getting about the war in Europe?
Well, we were following the British front and the Russian front. We heard about Buchenwald, that they discovered the atrocity German committed in camp, which was in Germany, but we heard about it. We also heard, we knew that some Polish authorities tried to inform the British, Polish underground army, inform the British and American government that Hitler is doing, Hitler plan and everything. I mean, we heard about it. I don't understand nothing was done. Only recently there was I think, movie on television about the Holocaust. And also another interesting about Eichmann. Did you see that? Yeah, it was very sad. Yeah. So most of my knowledge is sort of now and after the war. During the war, you just hear those things, but it's not substantiated.
Is there anything more during this period that you want to add, during 44 and 45?
Well, not really. I didn't see anything else. I was just in the Air Force, and there was a shortage of food and everywhere for British people. And they suffered, but not as much as for instance Europe, and mostly from bombing and.
Were your mother and sister still in India?
My mother was still in India till 1946, when she wanted either to go back to England, had a choice, or to back to Poland. But then she found my father then, she said, well, I have to go back to Poland. So she went back to Poland with my sister. Oh, that didn't last long, they got divorced.
And where were you in May 45, when the war ended?
I was in England in the Air Force, in that it was the Raider School, Raider School. When the war went, so we went to the nearest town and got drunk.
Can you describe the environment then?
Well, everybody was very joyous, and very happy that Germans surrendered. We were sort of Poles were very much concerned what's going to happen to the Poland, because of the East and Russia. We were not as happy. We couldn't be totally happy. We're happy that Germans surrendered, but we were really worried what's going to happen now. With Stalin take over Poland, because all those promises, what they say, the free election. I mean, nobody believed that. So we were worried about Poland.
When the war ended, what did you do?
I was in I was in a school which was organized by the British to retrain people to civilian life. And it was like we call it lyceum, which is like upper high school, like a junior college only. And after when I finished that, I applied to the university, college, and I got scholarship with the support, and to Bournemouth, and that's how it happened. Is the whole war ended for me.
Did you have any strong feelings about going back to Poland in 45 or 46?
Well, we were very strong not to go. We were, because a lot of people who went they got arrested. Most of the people who escaped from Russia were not welcome in Poland because they were witness what was really going on. So almost immediately they were arrested, almost everybody. So I think probably 80% or more of that Polish army which was in the Middle East stayed in England and gradually came to the United States, did not return to Poland. In fact, we had a government in London which was still continuation of the old government, which didn't recognize the Soviet occupation of Poland. And that government was recognized till about 1950, I think, by Portugal and Vatican, I think, and Spain, I think. So we still had a government, we had a newspapers, very well organized Polish, in London, Polish immigration. And there was a Polish university school which was for people who do not speak English. Was a Polish school which was on the same rights and law as the University of London. So a lot of people completed that.
How was, excuse me, how was the Polish government received by the English?
Well, during the war, we were the only allies, at first, and before America went to war. We had a very good relation with British, but as the Russians become more and more victorious and start putting pressure on Poland and all those countries, we were sort of starting being abandoned. And after the wars, a lot of English people, what you doing here? Why don't you go back to Poland? They don't, especially ordinary people, didn't recognize. How come you don't want to go back to Poland? What do you mean Russians are bad? They fought Germans with us, And so we had a lot of animosity from English people for a while, till the Cold War started. An Iron Curtain, that changed drastically. Now it's very good. I mean, we have a very good opinion and we enjoy.
So after the war, you remained in England and you started college, and now stories started pouring in about what happened in Europe and what the Nazis did. And were you hearing any of these stories?
Oh yes.
What did you hear?
Yes, we heard about liberation of all the camps, and we already knew it then that. About Auschwitz, I think, finally, and all those places. That became a non-fact after the war. Yeah.
Were you able to follow the Nuremberg trials?
A little bit. I follow it now more than but yes, I did follow. And
so you were, what college?
I was in Bournemouth, it was town on south of England, Bournemouth Municipal College. And then I went back to London and got married. and came to the United States in 1956.
In London, in the 40s, was there a lot of talk about the war and what had happened?
Oh yes, of course, yeah, especially of the ex-servicemen. There was a lot of talk, but there was not. I think most of the secrets, quote, were later after the war. 10 years or so. What was really happened, but everybody knew what was going to happen. What happened in Germany, and from people who were occupying Germany and everything. And also about what probably would interest you, the immigration of the ex-prisoners, Jewish prisoners to Israel, and British, in the news they show how they try to stop it, illegal immigration. I remember seeing the boat going in and things like that. So yeah, there was everybody knew about it. I think average English people and everybody else thought that Jewish people should have its own country and Israel and everything. I think everybody realized this is really politics, unfortunately.
When discussions were held about the war when you were in college, do you remember what students or professors' reactions were on hearing or discussing news about the concentration camps and
Well, in England, everybody believed that, and everybody was absolutely shocked and disgusted, about it. In the United States, was sometimes people didn't believe it, and when I was in Chicago and talking with friends, with American friends, it was so far away, I think was less informed than in Europe.
So how long were you in England?
Until 1956.
And you met your wife in England?
I met my wife in England, and my son was born then. And in 1956, we came in May to Chicago.
Why did you decide to leave England and come to America?
Mainly because of the greener pastures. Friends were telling me, that they have a car's apartment, which is, your own car, or apartment, So, because I had a very good job, and I felt I had a lot of English friends, and my wife was English, and their relatives. So there was no political reason to go. It's purely economical, So I went to Chicago because I had a friend there. I didn't like Chicago, so I came to California.
Is there anything else you'd like to add about your war experiences in Palestine?
Oh, I think it's about all. I don't.
Anything you would have done differently, or?
I couldn't. If I ever want to, I was a victim of circus. I had to go there, I had to go there, I had to go there. So, no, I think I've done everything. I don't think it would. If that was no war, I would be a completely different person. I would not be in England, and I wouldn't be in America, and I'm married now to a wonderful lady from New Zealand. so is so how could how come from Poland and New Zealand, So.
When did you see your mother and sister again?
1966.
So you hadn't seen them
from 43 to 1966. I came on holiday there.
To Poland?
To Poland, yeah.
Can you describe that journey?
Well, I was by a Pan American jet. And British Airlines, and my mother and my sister met me. No, sorry, 1958. 1958, I invited my mother to come to Chicago. And she came to Chicago. But she had to leave my sister behind. She was not allowed to come with my sister. So she came to Chicago. She stayed 6 months. She loved it at first, and then she got so homesick that she couldn't wait to go back to talk to her friends in Polish and everything. You know. And then in 1966 I came to Poland, and then I saw my sister for the first time since 1943. And some friends of mine, which I haven't seen since 1939. In fact, I remember the story. I came to see the village where my mother was born. And we used to go there before the war on holiday, you know, for 2 weeks. And I walked across with my sister in 1966, and I saw somebody. He said, "Oh, Doug, where have you been?" Nothing happened. Then, you know, like.
It's only 30 years
Yeah,
later.
yeah, life is the same. And everybody lied to each other. "Oh, you haven't changed a bit." I would always recognize you. Some old lady come running to me, "Dog, hug me." See? So you haven't changed a bit. so.
How did you feel being in Poland again after 30 years of absence?
Well, after about 3 days, I began to speak fluent Polish. But still, everybody say, "You know, you speak very evenly, even Polish. You know, don't go up and down. That's how we can recognize you. And by your glasses, you know, you can see that you are not, you're not Polish." And I felt you have to be careful what you say. I was told straight away by my sister, you know. And when we talk in the house, we look around, you know, because there was still Stalinist area, you know. But and when you landed, you know, you put the passport and you look in the special book, you know, and you see the soldier with the bayonet outside the plane when you landed, you know. Just stupid things, and it goes from one to another, you know. And then you see your relatives. But later become more and more. You know, now I was a few years ago. It's like they don't even look at your passport anymore. You know, the train. It's just completely free. Completely free Poland.
When you went back in '66, did you go back to Brest?
No, I couldn't because I was on the Russian side. Yeah, I couldn't.
Where were your mother and sister living? Where did you go?
Well, they're living in a town called Kielce, which is south of Warsaw. But they came, they were born in the area between Brest and Warsaw, in that area. So I used to go see my relatives, and we go by car as far as we can go east, you know. And but there was a border zone, so we couldn't. But the last year, I went with some relative all the way to the border, and on Polish side there is not even a border, you know, there's just a river, you know, it's a sign, border, you know, nobody cares. But on the Russian side, you can see all those willows, groves, you cannot see nothing. Nothing. You just see another side of the river, and you can hear the town, you know. Similar same thing when we go in Russia on Trans-Siberian train, and look through the window, you cannot see anything. There was a forest planted on both sides continuously, even like 20 feet deep, you know. All you just go to the forests.
Being back in Poland in the '60s, did you feel any remnants or leftovers from the war?
Yes, in Warsaw, and in Kielce, there was a town which was very strongly Jewish, predominant. It was all this area was emptied, and you know, from people from Jews during the German and was people were living, and we had that used to be Jewish areas, you know.
What did Warsaw look like? What is the...
Well, Warsaw, a completely new town. In fact, I was told that by a friend of mine who drove me around, he said, "You are is about 8 foot or 6 foot higher than it used to be," because we couldn't clear anything, it just leveled. Except the old town was rebuilt. the middle century town was completely rebuilt from the old drawings and photographs of the. But Warsaw was leveled by Germans after the uprising, especially the completely level. 1944.
In the 60s in Warsaw, was there a memorial there yet to the Jews in the Warsaw Uprising? Or
There was a ghetto. I don't know when. I don't know when the memorial was built, but I've heard of. In fact, we were driving, and a friend of mine would tell that used to be ghettos. Yeah, there's nothing there now. And I heard about the memorial. I don't know when it was built. No. And I think there's a synagogue too. Yeah.
what was your overall feeling being back in Poland again in the 60s?
Oh, it's a,
Positive experience?
no, not really. I felt that a new country, completely new, where the character of country was changed. I mean, Russians and Germans completely eliminated certain class of people, educated, what we call it intelligentsia. So anybody with a high education, doctors, everybody was dead. And the new people came through Russian schools, and from villages, and there's different character altogether. Poland is now. Now it begins, after so many years, begin to develop its own, status and people and everything. But because all people died, but Germans and Russians liquidated all, everybody.
Were you back there again since the 60s?
Yes, I was regularly, every 2 years I used to go to Poland, mainly to see my mother, and every 2 years I could see the difference, more freedom, and more people talk more open and better standard of living. And I was 1992, I think was last time. That was my mother died, and no, last year I was in Poland too. We went to Berlin and flying, and they took a train to Warsaw. We stayed in Berlin a few days, and we travel a lot. We've been in Austria and everywhere.
You were in Warsaw in '93?
Yeah, yes.
What were the changes from '66?
Oh, it's even from 2 years before, it's completely different. Streets look different, even colors. They're not drab gray, but there's a lot of private industry, coffee shops and stores. Mostly Germans, West Germans, stores and Polish, and you can get anything you want, provided you have money, and it's different, completely different. And what is unusual is this: a lot of Russians come from Russia now to Poland and try to sell things from Soviet Union. There was every town has a Russian market, designated area outside the town where Russians can come and sell their stuff. Because condition in Russia is, according to Russians, when I talk to them, this is like a paradise, Poland. Like Paris to Poles, or New York. So there are much worse conditions.
Do you have any strong positive memories or any regrets about the war and your involvement?
Not of my involvement, but I do have regrets how many people died. Millions and millions of people died. Poland before the war was 38 million, and after the war was 25. 4 million were Jewish people in Poland, and only I think about 30,000 left after the war. And the rest were Polish people who died in Russia, in concentration camp and everything else. So there's a tragic feeling, especially in 1966 when you came. Everybody had somebody who lost somebody, So And I feel very sorry for a number of people who died. You know, Poland, Germany, Russia, you know, terrible. So that is a tragic part about it. Hope it never happened again. But look what happened in Yugoslavia now. We're just looking at it. It's another Holocaust. No, and just like before, with the real Holocaust, nobody cares. Nobody cares now. So that's unfortunately, if you can't help yourself, nobody help you. So it's tragic but true. I'm sorry I couldn't give you any more specifically about
No,